How's it going, guys? Ayo here with a BFA Unholy PvP guide, just as I promised. So today we're gonna go over some of the changes to how Unholy is gonna play and the different builds you can make with it, and if they're viable or not for the upcoming expansion PvP wise. Right? So thank you guys for subscribing and for liking the videos. You guys have been a great help considering I started the channel recently, so all I have is to thank you guys, right? So let's get started. So here in the first row we can see that some of the previous talents from Legion have been changed, like Clawing Shadows and Infected Claws. They've been changed from the level 60 tier, I believe, to the level 56 tier. So basically Infected Claws still does the same thing as it used to do before. It causes your ghoul's attack to have a 30% chance to cause a fresh wound on the target. We still have Owl Serve, which is the same thing. You can summon an extra skeleton to fight for you, right? If you're facing another type of comp that kills pets. Before in Legion this would help because it used to remove the cooldown from the pet summoning, so if your pet dies you could just resummon, but the difference now is that it only raises an extra pet for you. It doesn't remove the cooldown. So for you DKs out there who used to take this ability in order to constantly have a pet if it dies, sorry to disappoint you, but it's gone, right? And now you only have an extra pet. And we have Clawing Shadows, which replaces Skirt Strike. It costs 1 rune to use, and it deals 674 shadow damage, which benefits from your mastery, and causes 1 Fresco wound to burst. Before, this ability, I believe, used to be 40 yard range, now it's 30 yards. I'm not sure, but it's what I see as viable in this tier, so I usually might recommend that. I'm sorry about my voice, by the way. I have a bit of a cold, so don't mind me. In our level 57 tier, we have Bursting Sores, Ebon Fever, and Unholy Blight. That's right, guys, Unholy Blight is back. It costs 1 rune, 45-second cooldown, and surrounds yourself with a bioswarm of insects for 6 seconds, stinging all nearby enemies and infecting them with an unholy disease that deals 1,652 damage over 14 seconds. We also have Ebon Fever, which makes your virulent plague deal 15% more damage in half of the time of the duration of the disease, right? And we have Bursting Swords. First wounds deal 25% more damage when burst, and all enemies within 8 yards of a burst festering wound suffer 337 shadow damage. Again, guys, it's very important that you guys keep in mind that every time shadow damage is mentioned, it benefits from your mastery. So the more mastery you have, the more shadow damage you do. I believe Bursting Swords in live now deals 50% more damage. I'm not sure if it's 25 or not. If so, it's a 25% nerf on the ability. But with the stat changes, it might not be that big a nerf. Personally, I take Ebon Fever always because I prefer more of a disease and rot type gameplay as Unholy rather than a burst damage one. Alright? In our next tier we have a new talent, Grip of the Dead, which Death and Decay reduces the movement speed of enemies within its area by 90%, decaying by 10% every second. This is an interesting talent, but I really don't see its viability in an arena situation because usually people don't stand at the same spot and you probably will move around yourself, so I would not recommend this. In our next tier we have Death's Reach, which increases the range of Death Grip by 10 yards, and killing an enemy that yields experience or honor resets the cooldown of Death Grip. I don't see this talent being used in arena, which leaves us with our best choice in this tier, Asphyxiate, which has 20 yards, it's on a 45-second cooldown, and lifts the target enemy off the ground, crushing their throat with dark energy and stunning them for 4 seconds. As a melee class, it's always good to have a stun at your disposal to set up kills to help your team secure a kill. So I would recommend asphyxiate if you would want to help your team succeed and if you're really serious about pushing and not trolling. In the next tier we have Petulant Puzzles, and what this does is bursting a festering wound has a 10% chance to grant you runic corruption, right? So I believe this used to be a passive ability, I'm not sure. Well, I think this used to be a passive ability or a talent, but based on what it says, it's really not worth it. I mean, 10% chance of granting runic corruption. Next talent is Harbinger of Doom, which send dooms trigger 15% more often and can accumulate up to 2 charges. This ability used to be an artifact trait, which is now a talent. It's a pretty interesting ability, right? Let's take a look at Soul Reaper. Soul Reaper is an instant melee attack on a 45-second cooldown, which rips out an enemy's soul, dealing 1,521 shadow damage over 8 seconds. If the target that uses Experience Runner dies while affected by Soul Reaper, you gain 10% more haste for 8 seconds. So basically this ability was changed. Before, back when Unholy was in the golden ages, you would put Soul Reaper on a target and it would explode for like a shit ton of damage and one-shot someone just like an execute. Then Blizzard changed it and they made it so that you apply the Soul Reaper debuff, and when you burst 3 wounds, it increases your haste per wound burst. Now what this ability does is you just put out dot damage over 8 seconds. That's it. So if you plan to burst on a target, you could just pop your cooldowns, go ham, and throw Soul Reaper on top of that if they're low, just to increase the damage, right? Who knows? If you get a kill, you get the haste, right? So I would definitely recommend, depending on the team you're fighting and the comp you're running, Soul Reaper might definitely be a plus. You know, if you're playing like with an affliction lock, right, and the dots are starting to rot on the team, you could just stun a target or CC the healer set up on a target. You know, just blow all your cooldowns, just blow your load on the target, throw a Soul Reaper, secure the kill, right? In certain comps, you know, if you're playing classes that can really kite you well, Sudden Doom might be pretty interesting. You know, you get the extra death coils, you know, the extra chances, 2 charges. It's also pretty nice. But I would have to take Soul Reaper for this tier, right? In our next tier we have Spell Eater, which is the same. It absorbs a 30% extra magic damage. It lasts 5 seconds longer in your AMS. We have Wraith Walk, which used to be baseline for all DKs and now is a talent. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, and you sidestep into the Shadowlands, removing all root effects and increasing your movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. Taking any action cancels the effect. While active, your movement speed cannot be reduced below 170%. So Soul Reaper is back. Unfortunately, it's not baseline, it's a talent. For our next talent here, we have Death Pact. That's right, guys, Death Pact is back. It's instant, 2-minute cooldown, and you create a Death Pact that heals you for 50% of your maximum health, but absorbs incoming healing equal to 30% of your maximum health for 16 seconds. So what this does, guys, is that before, this ability used to sacrifice the life of your pet, so you would not take the damage. But now it has nothing to do with your pet anymore, and it's just 50% health, but you don't get 30% healing. So it's kind of a trade. This might be used in a few comps, but since DKs already have no mobility, I would definitely still recommend Wraith Walk, just so you have an extra gap closer, you know. In our next tier we have Pestilence. Death and Decay damage is increased by 10%, chance to apply first wound on the enemy. This is dog shit. This is for PvE. Then we have Defile, which replaces your Death and Decay, and it makes it so that you defile the ground, dealing 924 shadow damage to all enemies over 10 seconds, and while you remain within your defile, your clawing shadows will hit all enemies near the target. If any enemies are standing in the defile, it grows in size every second. Again, PvE talent. Don't recommend it. Now, our next talent, guys, it is Epidemic. It causes each of your virulent plagues to flare up, dealing 337 shadow damage, benefits from mastery, to the infected enemy, and an additional 135 damage to all other enemies near them. This talent used to be a talent in the second row in Legion. It's now switched to the second to last row, and Epidemic will synergize perfectly well with Ebb and Fever. So basically, as you can see in the ability, it only costs 30 runic power. Before, it used to generate runic power, now it costs 30 runic power, but there's no range on the ability. You can have a virulent plague on a target, and they could be 200 yards away, and this ability will still make your disease erupt on them, right? So I would definitely recommend this, especially for running with a rod comp like an Affliction Warlock or Shadow Priest, right? This ability could be very good, you know, get your disease on everyone, get lockdowns on everyone, and just use this ability when they're kiting you, right? Or when they're stacked, you can drop Death and Decay, use Epidemic, really good ability. Alright guys, so in our level 100 tier, this is where most of the important changes come. Army of the Damned is a new talent, right? This used to be an artifact trait, it's now implemented as a talent. It makes your Death Coil and Epidemic reduce the cooldown of Apocalypse by 1 sec, and Army of the Dead by 5 seconds. Army of the Dead is not usable in Arena, but your Apocalypse is. So every Death Coil and Epidemic you use reduces it by 1 second, alright? And your Apocalypse is a 1.5 minute cooldown. So this is pretty interesting if you're playing a comp that is similar to a TSG or Hero Cleave, right? Or if you're playing with a Windwalker Monk, this could be really good for you to do a lot of burst damage and have that quick unexpected burst damage, right? In our next talent, we have Unholy Frenzy, right, which was switched from the third row in Legion to the last one in BFA. What this ability does is it incites you into a killing frenzy for 12 seconds, increasing your haste by 20% and causing auto attacks to infect the target with a festering wound. So basically, they got the talent Blighted Rune Weapon, and increased its haste by 20%. The way Unholy Frenzy used to work is that every time you burst a festering wound, you would get 100% haste. Now it only increases your haste by 20%, but you don't have to maintain it. It lasts for 12 seconds. So this could be used as sort of a burst talent, just like a Recklessness, or something to help you pump out the damage when you need it. You know, if you enrage your pet, you know, pop this, get your diseases on the target, use your Soul Reaper, that could be a lot of damage, right? So depending on the comp you're playing, if you're playing more of a single target burst comp, you know, like a TSG, this talent could also be very viable for you. And we have our last talent, which is Summon Gargoyle. It's on a 30-yard range, 3-minute cooldown, and you summon a gargoyle into the area to bombard the target for 30 seconds. The gargoyle gains 1% damage for every 2 runic power you spend. So what Blizzard did here is that they got the gargoyle and they got the Dark Arbiter, and they merged the two. Basically you have a gargoyle with all the abilities of the Dark Arbiter, and it lasts for the whole duration. Before, the problem with Dark Arbiter is that it lasted about 10 to 15 seconds less than the gargoyle. So you have to generate the runic power quick, right, and spend it all within 20 seconds. And by the time you reach a very good quantity, by the time you reach a very high quantity of runic power, your Dark Arbiter would almost be gone, but this is not the case. You guys have to keep in mind that the target will have to deal with a gargoyle flying for 30 seconds and constantly having its damage increased for 30 seconds. That's a lot. People are not going to be able to ignore the gargoyle anymore. So I would definitely recommend this talent as well, depending on the comp you play. I think the battle is between Unholy Frenzy and Summon Gargoyle. It all boils down to your playstyle, right? So now let's take a look at the honor talents, right? As you guys know, they're not going to be exactly honor talents, right? They're more going to be of like buffs, because Blizzard removed the whole honor talent section. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one, which is the same as before. Trinket, Relentless, or Adaption. Doesn't change. I'm playing Orc in beta, so I take Relentless. And our second one, as you guys can see, it's not categorized by tiers anymore. So you can basically, like before, you used to have in one row your Trinket, in the other row your auras, like Heartstop Aura, Necrotic Aura, Decomposing Aura. Now you can literally choose any one of those that you would like. So you have Pandemic back, which causes your wounds to flare up when you outbreak and everything. We have AMZ, right? We have Dark Sim again, Heartstop Aura. But I would definitely recommend Necrotic Strike again, which does the same thing. It absorbs healing, converts a faster wound into a healing absorb. Right, this is the bread and butter of Unholy DKs, where all your pressure comes from. We have Unholy Mutation, right? It makes it so your Virulent Plague gets for 400% of normal damage. When this spell expires, target stuck by disruption have the movement speed reduced by 50%, right? So this is also pretty interesting, but what is a turnoff for me in this ability is that it deals 400% damage only when it expires or when it's dispelled, right? But maybe you can make this work if you run Ebon Fever. The Virulent Plague deals 15% more damage in half the time. So if you might want to try this, you're gonna have to wait until it expires to reapply, which could be a pain for some people. You have Reanimation, which does the same thing, right? I would not recommend this honor talent. It's pretty bad. You have Cadaverous Pallor, which converts your spells that hit you into a disease, which is, I would not recommend it. You have Necrotic Aura and Decomposing Aura as well. If you want, you can even use Heartstop, Necrotic, and Decomposing at the same time, right? Depends. And you have Ghoulish Monstrosities too, which ghoul summoned by Army of the Dead leap together to form a single ghoulish monstrosity. Reduces the cooldown of Army of the Dead by 4 minutes. Army of the Dead isn't usable in Arena, so I don't see how you would want to take this, right? I go with Crypt Fever, which makes enemies have a chance to take damage when they're healed. This is really good. Stacks with Necrotic Strike. And Wandering Plague. Outbreak infects the target with Wandering Plague, causing 2k shadow damage over 8 seconds. When the Wandering Plague duration ends, it jumps to a nearby target, right? Lasts for 3 jumps. This goes very well because DKs are back to being able to play those strong, rot-heavy disease comps, you know, because you have your Crypt Fever, your Necrotics, to prevent healing output, and you have your Wandering Plague, your Ebon Fever, and your Epidemic to maintain the constant rot damage. So these are the talents that I would recommend you play, right? At level 100 you might want to summon Gargoyle or Unholy Frenzy, it's up to you, but these are what I would recommend. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the abilities in our spellbook. Here you can see that it's about the same thing, right? We have our Apocalypse, Baseline, AMS, Normal, but our Dark Transformation, it has a 100-yard range, and it's on a 1-minute cooldown, and it transforms your ghoul into a powerful undead monstrosity for 15 seconds. The ghoul's abilities are empowered and taking new functions while the transformation is active. So the big change here is that your pet transformation does not last for 30 seconds. It'll be reduced by 50%, but of course the damage will be increased, right? So in one way we lose the duration, and in the other way we have increased damage from our pet. But this ability now it's going to be a bit more harder to use because you guys are going to have to time your ability perfect so you maximize it. You know, you coordinate with a team, right? I have damage, then you pop your Unholy Frenzy, you pop your Empower Demon, your Dark Transformation, you pop your Soul Reaper, boom, that's a lot of damage right there. You really just cannot afford to misuse this ability because it's on a 1 minute cooldown now, right? We have our Death Coil, which is the same as before, but the catch here is that it reduces the cooldown of Dark Transformation by 1 second. So you always want to dump your runic power on Death Coils if you can, and if you're playing more of a rock comp, you dump it on Epidemic. It's all situational, guys. You need to be able to keep track of your cooldowns and have good cooldown management. We have another ability that we get now, which is Death's Advance. It's back. It lasts, hits on a 4 to 5 second cooldown, and for 8 seconds your movement speed is increased by 30%. You can't be slowed below 100% of your normal speed, and you're immune to forced movements and knockbacks, right? So, and passively, you can't be slowed below 70% of your normal speed. This is huge. It's going to make DKs very hard to peel now, and it's going to bring back those strong melee cleave comps like TSG. Right? It's going to be really hard to shake a DK off you with this ability, because on top of Wraith Walk, you also have another movement speed increase and immunity for you. So this is a pretty powerful talent that we got, ability that we got, sorry. We have our IBF, of course, 3 minute cooldown. Let's see, we have a Raise Dead, of course, 30-second cooldown. They changed the icon a little bit. We have our Rune Forges, of course, Rune of the Fallen Crusader, Sunscreen Gargoyle, Razor Eyes, and that's about it. The Mastery increases your shadow damage by 47%. Rune of Corruption, each rune you spend has a 1.4 chance to increase your rune generation rate by 100 for 3 seconds. And Sun Doom, which your attacks have a chance to make your gargoyle cost no runic power. So basically those are some of the changes, guys. And another thing, I don't have the Heart of Azeroth necklace, but I know there are traits in those too. In the future, when the expansion hits, and we have access to more PvP content, I will make another in-depth guide for this, but this is just for you guys to have an idea of what to expect from Unholy, right? So I'm gonna test some of the things here on a training dummy, just so you guys could have an idea of some of the changes. Alright, so let's go. Break, Festering Shred, Death Coil, Unholy Frenzy, Apocalypse, Empower Pet, Soul Reaper. You guys see the damage? Epidemic. This is basically it, guys. You just maintain now. As you can see, your pet's doing a lot of damage. Your diseases also. Keep the diseases up. Sudden death. Alright, guys. I hope this was some of help to you, and like I said, when BFA goes live, I will have an in-depth guide with details and rotations and how to set up and comps. Alright, so thanks for tuning in. Good job, good luck, and have a nice day.